Imagine waking up one day and realizing that the year you've been using to mark time is based on a decision made centuries ago, one that might not even be entirely accurate. Why do we say, this is the year 2025? Why does our calendar start from what we call year one? Who decided this? And how did this system become the global standard? Most people assume that the modern calendar has existed since the beginning of time, or that it has always been universally agreed upon. But the reality is far more complex. Our current system of counting years is a relatively recent invention in the grand scheme of human history, shaped by religious, political, and mathematical decisions over the centuries. And at the center of this story is a little-known monk, a miscalculation, and a world that adopted his system anyway. Before we dive into who decided that there should be a year one, it's important to understand how ancient civilizations measured time. Humans have always had a need to keep track of time, whether for agriculture, religious ceremonies, or governance. The ancient Egyptians developed one of the first calendars, based on the cycles of the Nile River and the movement of the stars. Their calendar consisted of 365 days, divided into 12 months of 30 days each, plus 5 extra days. They tracked time based on the reigns of their pharaohs, meaning that their year one would change with each new ruler. The Romans, before adopting our modern numbering system, counted years from the founding of their city, Rome, in 753 BCE, and also used consular dating, marking years by the names of the 2 consuls who served that year. Later, Julius Caesar introduced the Julian calendar in 45 BCE, standardizing the length of the year, but still not designating a fixed year one. Other civilizations had their own methods. The Jewish calendar, based on lunar cycles, counts years from what is considered the creation of the world, placing the current Jewish year at approximately 5785. The Chinese calendar follows a lunisolar system with years named after zodiac, animals, and dynastic reigns. The Hindu calendar, one of the oldest still in use today, is based on different epoch events, such as the Vikram Samvat, which started in 57 BCE, and the Saka era, which began in 78 CE. Meanwhile, the Islamic calendar, also based on lunar cycles, starts with the Hijra, the migration of Prophet Muhammad from Mecca to Medina in 622 CE, marking year one for the Islamic world. Among the Mayans, the long count calendar had a starting date that corresponds to 3114 BCE in the Gregorian system. The Aztecs also had a calendar system that relied on both solar and ritual cycles. Other cultures, such as the Zoroastrians, developed calendars based on 365-day cycles aligned with religious festivals. And the Ethiopian calendar, which still follows an alternate system today, currently runs about 7 to 8 years behind the Gregorian calendar. None of these systems used a universal year one. So where did our modern way of counting years come from? The man credited with establishing the year one we use today was a Scythian monk named Dionysius Exiguus, who lived in the early 6th century CE. His work would change the way we count time forever, though not necessarily with complete accuracy. Dionysius was a scholar and theologian, and his primary task was to determine the correct date for Easter each year. The method of calculation used at the time relied on the reign of the Roman Emperor Diocletian, who was infamous for persecuting Christians. Dionysius did not want to use a system tied to a ruler who had persecuted his faith, so he sought a new way to count the years. Instead of using Diocletian's system, he decided to calculate years from the birth of Jesus Christ. He established what he believed was the year of Jesus' birth and called it Anno Domini 1, the year of our Lord 1. But here's the twist: Dionysius got the date wrong. Modern historians and scholars have analyzed Dionysius's calculations and found significant errors. Based on historical and biblical records, Jesus was likely born between 6 and 4 BCE, meaning that year 1 should have been at least 4 years earlier. He relied on earlier Roman and Greek calculations, which contained their own inaccuracies. Additionally, there was no concept of zero in the number system used at the time, so his calendar jumped directly from 1 BCE to 1 CE, skipping an actual year zero. His miscalculations were further complicated by historical events like the death of King Herod, who is known to have died in 4 BCE, meaning that Jesus could not have been born after that date. Despite these errors, Dionysius' system was gradually adopted in Christian Europe, replacing older methods of counting years. However, it took centuries for his Anno Domini system to become widespread. The transition was not immediate. The use of AD, Anno Domini, did not become standard practice across Europe until the 8th century, when Charlemagne promoted it as part of his efforts to unify his empire under a common system. Later, the Gregorian calendar reform of 1582, spearheaded by Pope Gregory XIII, helped further solidify the use of the AD system by correcting errors in the Julian calendar and ensuring that leap years were calculated more accurately. As European nations expanded their influence through colonization and trade, the Gregorian calendar spread worldwide, eventually becoming the dominant system despite continued use of other regional calendars. Today, even countries that follow their own traditional calendars, such as China and Iran, still use the Gregorian system for international communication and trade. So, who decided that year one was the start of everything? The answer is a single monk, Dionysius Exiguus, who made a miscalculation, but whose system still became the basis of the world's calendar. His decision, influenced by religious and political reasons, has shaped how we think about time today. If Dionysius had been more precise, we might be calling this year 2029 or 2031 instead of 2025. Despite its inaccuracies, the system he established became so deeply embedded in global history that changing it now would be nearly impossible. Now, next time you look at a calendar, remember that history isn't just about events. It's about decisions that shaped the way we see the world. And sometimes, even a small mistake can change history forever. What do you think? Should we have adjusted for the mistake, or are we too far along to change it now? Let us know in the comments.